Thanks, Patrick, and thanks, Terry, for reading how it works. Here it is, front to back. I was I was born in a real small town in East Texas, and it's about 4,500 people. Actually, we lived in a neighboring town to the one that when my parents were together, and we had a real normal life. Dad had a decent job. We were able to build a new house. Mom was a homemaker. Kids played in the street till the street lights came on. We ran behind the mosquito fogger. Like, that's what's wrong with me. And it was just pretty normal. We had family, friends, and all the kids would play together. And I had a couple of aunts, my dad's sisters, and them and my dad all had 3 kids, and we were all, pretty close in age. So we kind of grew up together, and they lived in another. There was like a little triangle, these 3 little towns. So we saw each other a lot, and those were, my earliest best friends. And then when I was 8, my parents started. I just remember, I think, one time hearing them fight in the bedroom, and I'd never heard that before. And soon after, we were moving to my grandparents' house in Pittsburgh, the little town I grew up the rest of my growing up years. And we moved in with my grandparents. My grandparents are a big part of my story. I loved them. They were what I call the salt of the earth. They just don't make them like that anymore. Totally self-sacrificial and didn't mind. Well, I mean, they probably minded it. They didn't show it. They were always had our back. We didn't. My dad. We had one car. That was normal back then. For the husband to take the car to work, I guess, or be driven to work, and Dad took the car because he was the worker. So we didn't have a car. Very little child support, and Mom had never really had a job, professional job. My people are farmers. Back in that generation, my grandparents, they were all farmers, and they did other stuff too. But people of the earth, and I'm glad to have that in my genes. I love gardening and having my hands in the dirt. And but we moved with my grandparents, and it wasn't so bad because the divorce wasn't so bad because we were crazy about our grandparents, and they really doted on us. And they didn't have a lot, but they any excess they had, they helped us to have a normal life until my mother could get on her feet working. And she was I think her first job was she was a Stanley brush salesperson. Alan, you probably remember that. Nobody else. I don't know when but yeah, they were brushes, and they were real clever and everything. And I remember riding around with her a few times, going to people's houses and bringing all the brushes in and selling, and and she was real personable and real pretty and cute and sweet. So, but then she became a manicurist, and my cousins' mothers were twins, and they had a beauty shop in Mount Pleasant, and my mom went to work with them as a shampooer and a manicurist. And we finally got our first car. I think we drove my uncle's car for a while. It's like a 56 Chevy or something, and we were doing okay until Mom she she wanted to start dating again, and she never really had much experience with dating from what I've heard. She pretty much maybe dated a little in high school, but I think was kind of shy and studious. And anyway, she met my dad. She was going to go to college, and she met my dad, I think at a high school football game her senior year. And as soon as she graduated, they married. And they had me and two older brothers by the time she was 23. So she had her hands full. And Dad was the worker and the disciplinarian, and she was the nurturer. But when she started dating and she didn't know what she was doing, she was kind of, I guess, like the typical divorcee that straight guys think about, so-and-so's mom's hot, and men just took advantage of her, and she let them do it. And I learned about the definition of insanity early on in her doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results. I mean, and it lasted the whole, all through, gosh, probably even into my 30s. But there I was, probably at that time about 11 or 12 years old, and I took it on myself. I was always kind of an empath, and I still really am. I'm not bragging about it. It can be a real burden sometimes, but I took it on myself to try to comfort her when she was upset, and it just fueled the fire. She got even more upset, and I think that was part of my not having much self-esteem, is that anything that I suggested, and she wasn't willing to change. She wanted to be happy, wanted to find the right man, but she wasn't willing to change her behavior. And that's what happens to us a lot of times. When we come in here, we're just in a rut, and the vicious cycle of drinking, getting drunk, hangover, not going to do it today, again today, and by nightfall you're ready to go out and do it again, and all that. But that's just kind of a foundation my first drink was when I think I was either about to turn 14. I have a late birthday, and I barely made it into a school because I have a late August birthday. And so I was 13, almost 14. I had two older brothers. They had a lot of friends, and they had one brother had a motorcycle, and the other brother had my mom's car. And so I ended up sometimes just to be entertained hanging around with them. And I was real quiet, and I would just sit in the back seat and watch them carry on, and probably got ideas for how I was going to behave later. And I remember one of the guys, he was in his mom's Buick Electra, and he had a fold-down armrest in the back seat, and there was a bottle of, I folded it down, being the queen I am, and there was a bottle of whiskey or something back there, and they started drinking that, and I just, was just watching. But one of the guys, right before my freshman year, he was a friend of both of my brothers, and then there were two girls we were all a friend group, and they took me out, he and the two girls, specifically to get me drunk. And I'd never had a drink of any, well, I think I tasted my dad's beer when I was a little kid, but, and it didn't taste good because we were a dry county, and we had to either drive about 40 miles to get beer or liquor, or we could go to what was called bootleggers. And there were several. There were probably more than we knew about. because it was real hush-hush. And, they probably got busted every now and then and quit for a week and then started back. But they would go to the beer stores and buy the cheap beer and the cheap wine and maybe some whiskey, and they would keep it in their homes. And kids would come by it after dark, and we would go up to the door, and he would sell us beer out of his refrigerator. And a lot of times it would be late at night when we'd go back for more, and we would go to the side door where his bedroom was, and I'm sure his wife was in there, and they would wake him up, how many you want, we get more, and he'd be in his underwear, his white boxers, and, fat guy. And, it was something, desperate measures. And, but anyway, we had the quarts of beer. That's what he sold. And it was cold when we got it, but you had to drink it pretty fast, or because it was really nasty when it got hot. I mean, super nasty. So I had my first quart of beer. I think back then we paid $1, and it may have gone up to $1.25. My junior and senior year or something, I don't know. But it didn't taste good. But I'd started realizing that I knew I was gay real early, probably by the time I was 7 or 8 years old. I didn't know what it was. I just know that I didn't want to. My mother was real sweet, and my dad was just kind of weird, and he still is. And me and my two brothers, we did what he told us to do, but I don't know. I just decided pretty early I didn't want to be like him, and not in that him being a man, just didn't want to have that personality, that quirky personality, and I probably have some of it. We all inherit things from our parents, so I don't know. I think I was born that way. There are different stories on that, but I don't think it helped that I didn't have a very good example of a father. And as twisted up as my mom was about dating and all, we knew that she loved us. And it was questionable at times whether he did. One thing he did do, though, is after they divorced, he came and got us on Sundays, every Sunday, and usually took us over to his parents, my other grandparents' house, and all the cousins would come and the brothers and sisters, and we'd have a big Sunday meal after they went to church. It was usually either fried chicken or pot roast, and all the side dishes. And all the ladies would get in the kitchen, and it was like a big country kitchen with a den on one end. It was the ladies' family home that they grew up in, and it was a pretty nice home for the early 1900s. Real tall ceilings and a wraparound porch, and I can just see it in a big table in the. I guess it's really more like what you would call a gathering room. And we'd all sit around and eat and enjoy the food and each other's company. And my granddad had a little Chihuahua dog, and he would be feeding it, and it was cute memories. And but I don't know where I was going with that. But anyway, I had that first drink, and I finished it, and I didn't feel anything at first, and then I started feeling it, and by then I was fully aware that I was gay, that I was different from all of my boy friends. We'd spent the night at each other's houses enough during junior high that I realized there was something wrong with me that wasn't wrong with them. So, I was acutely aware that I was different, and that I had to keep it a secret. And when I drank that first beer and started feeling what alcohol makes us feel like. And I became, like we say, I became better looking, more fun to be around, and I felt just like everybody else. I didn't feel different, and that's what kept me drinking all those years, was to alleviate those feelings. And I'm sure that's very common in here, but that me being gay played a big part of that. And anywhere that I speak, whether it's a gay group or not, I'll say that part, because it's just such a huge part of why I started drinking. And so we don't really grow up emotionally when we drink alcoholically, and I did from the very beginning. I remember I spent the night. The car we were in, this guy's mother always had these real cool old cars. Like, she had one of the first Land Cruisers, and she always bought them used, but they were in real good condition. And she had a Rambler, 4-door with fins on it, and it was pink, like Mary Kay pink, and we called it the Pink Titty. And and that's what I got drunk in. And the first time I needed to get out and go to the bathroom, they drove off and left me. And just as a joke, and I was drunk, and I was like, oh my God, what do? I don't want anybody to see me drunk. I laid down in the ditch, and and a couple of cars came by, and I was like, and finally they came back, and they were all laughing and everything. And I went home and spent the night at the guy's house, because I didn't want my family to see me drunk. And I got the bed spins. I threw up. He's like, don't you throw up in my mom's house? They were out doing something. And it's horrible. I hate to throw up to this day. I'll avoid it like the plague, but I somehow got through the night, woke up with hangover, and then by afternoon I was feeling better. I'd had a couple of meals, and went out and did it again, and just kept going out and doing it again. And all through high school, I don't know how many nights a week I usually went out, but it had to be at least 3 or 4. And on the weekends, we would just, I had those older friends who had cars, and we didn't have a lot of rules. We were expected to be home by a certain time, but as long as they knew where we were and who we were with, and a lot of times they didn't know who we were with, but I would always tell them where I was going. And we would go on road trips to other towns to see older friends who had already started their careers out, and spend the night at their house, and of course party and play cards, drunken card games, and that was my life. And I went on and got an associate's degree. I had always had a keen interest in 2 things growing up. One was home design and planning. I started being interested in that literally when I was about 6 years old. And we had a new house. My aunt worked for FHA, and she was always bringing home plans, and I was fascinated by them. And so I followed that career and got a design and drafting degree, and worked in that field for about 12 years in Longview, Texas. And that was a small city, and there were opportunities there. And but I found new friends there, and I found people like me, like we do, that drank like me, and we had a good time, or thought we were, and everything seemed good, except I was still trying to date girls, women, and fake it through that so I'd fit in. And I don't know, probably some of you did that too, I don't know. And it wasn't horrible, because I like girls. I just, didn't want to have sex with them. And so I would take them out to eat dinner and a movie, and I'd take them home and kiss them at the door, and got to be a pretty good kisser, And but as I got older, more was expected. And I don't know. It was so weird. That didn't appeal to me at all. And I was around these other guys, and you could tell that it appealed to them a lot. And they were very serious about having girlfriends and stuff, and I wasn't. I didn't have any problem. I didn't even give it a second thought about breaking up with them by just stop calling them, you know. And I didn't think about it hurting their feelings or anything. I just thought, well, I showed them a good time, and I was nice to them and all that. But not until later on did I realize that I had hurt some people, and I went on into my early 30s, and finally, the last girl I dated, I just said, I can't do this anymore, because I realized I'd hurt somebody, and had been, and was hearing things from other friends of theirs, about that, and I was just like, I can't do that anymore. And but continued all along drinking. I got out of a job when I was around 30, and my brother lived in Carrollton, and he told me, come to Dallas, you'll find a job real quick. And he was right, and I did. And I didn't want to move here because I loved where I lived, but in hindsight, it was the exact thing that needed to happen, because I needed to be introduced to a gay society. And that was not very high class in the beginning. I was like a typical kid in a candy store, and just wanted to have sex and just like we do when we get drunk and that libido kicks in. And I really didn't date many guys very long at all. Either they lost interest in me, or I did in them, or I didn't think they were good enough for me. Big ego. And so, I had this idealistic relationship with another man, but I couldn't visualize being able to go out in public and us be comfortable around other people. But I just started powering my way through that, and letting people in my circle know, and most people in my circle was straight. I did that for a long time, and I finally started making gay friends, and I started slowly letting my close friends in my circle, gay straight friends, know. And and it was weird. Back then, kids now, I think they have it so much easier because it's so much more acceptable. But it was real risky back then. You never knew how somebody was going to react. So my go-to when I had all those fears was drinking. And I had stopped drinking beer as much, and I graduated to mixed drinks. I drank rum and Coke for the longest, and then Cuba Libre, with the little lime, and I thought that was cool. And it was really cool when I was sitting at home drinking by myself, and the Coke started getting less and less, just enough to flavor the rum, and I'd have like 3 at night, and I didn't know if I was going to get out and drive around or start drunk dialing or whatever. I just became kind of desperate, and it was pretty pitiful. But I kept it to myself. I was real involved in a Baptist church singles group when I was all through my 20s. I was president one year, and I was did the newsletter 4 years. So I was real active in it, and people didn't know. I went home at night and did it by myself, or went away for the weekend. And so that I was just living 2 lives, and I don't know. I got through it. I look back at all the stuff that I got through and how much I hated myself and wanted to die and just didn't have the courage to put a gun to my head. And I didn't think about how much that would hurt other people, like my family, until my brother did it later on. But I met, I was out at a village station, and I was just trolling around like we did, drinking and trolling around, looking for somebody to talk to, and my eyes locked on this guy, Phil Alvarado, and he went one way and I went the other, and we kind of were following each other around the club and we finally got back together, and we've been together ever since. And that was 28 years ago. Yeah. And he lived in El Paso, was just in town visiting a friend and exploring his gay life because, he's a teacher, and but anyway, that's one of the very best things that ever happened to me, and I'm very grateful for our relationship every day. I thank God for it. But the first few years when I was still drinking, it was not real good. I misbehaved a lot. And I'm ashamed of it. And I was ashamed of it the next day, every time I did it. And I apologized profusely. And then, that alcoholic brain, I just kind of kept doing it periodically and, just going out and screwing up, making a fool of myself, making a fool out of him. And, I'm not ashamed of that period, but I finally found AA. And I had known really since I was in my 20s that I had a drinking problem. I blacked out, I think, the first time at like 19. I may have still been in high school. And that became a series of blackouts. And I always woke up in the biggest fear the next day that something had happened that I don't remember. I might have hurt someone. Or said something to sever a friendship or whatever. The shame of waking up and feeling like that. And I was already on the depressive side, and that just made it worse, just the darkest depression. And I would just have to, if I hadn't had a job, I don't know what I would have done, but I had a job, and I was always pretty put myself into my job, and that was a distraction. And but I got into that pattern that I mentioned earlier about, and I started working for this German man. It was a very interesting company, and what he did, we bought and exported goods for ExxonMobil in Nigeria. And there was a lot to the job, mostly logistics, and there was a lot of stuff about getting past their customs and payoffs and all that. I wasn't involved in that. We had a shipper that did all that, and we didn't ask questions. We just wanted to get there. And this guy was making millions of dollars, but he was mean as hell. And I knew in the first week working with him, probably in the first day, that I didn't really belong there. But I had finally I had gotten laid off before and had gone a few months without a job. And I was like, I've got a job. I can do this. I'm going to stick with it. And one of his suppliers, who was a guy that I went to junior college with, told me during the first week, he said, you need to get your ass out of there and get another job. This guy is crazy. I stayed there 2.5 years. And I finally just blew up at him. I mean, it's just been building up and building up. And I watched coworkers do the same thing. They just, start screaming at him, and he had one of those sadistic ego things, and I think it made him happy to make other people unhappy. I don't know, but I got out of there, anyway, in 2001, my brother, that was 16 months older than me, killed himself. And he had been staying with me and Phil, going through a divorce. He'd stay there about 3 nights a week, and I would talk to him every day, and I thought I could help him. But here I am, an alcoholic, and I had by then graduated to martinis, one of the most dangerous things you can drink. And I hear in here a lot of vodka's what did a lot of people in. And anyway, I hope I was giving him good advice, but he was distraught and he was inconsolable. And he wanted to hold his family together, and it was just a real dysfunctional situation. And he had this young boy that him and that wife had together. And me and that kid were just real close, me and Phil and him, and we always had a real good time around him. And anyway, my brother finally, he went back to his wife to try to make it work. I knew it was a mistake, but and then he called me up 3 weeks later, wanted to come back, and I said, that's not the answer to your problem. You were miserable when you were here. And well, the next thing I know, I'm getting a call from Park Methodist Hospital that they won't tell you on the phone, that he's shot himself. They'll just tell you need to come here. And it was rush hour. It's like 5 o'clock. And we went across town trying to get there, and I was freaking out. And anyway, he died that night, and I told his wife had what's called dissociative disorder. She was adopted, and I'd found out, I never knew it, but she was always a little cuckoo. And she didn't make very good decisions when it came to raising kids, and everybody knew it. And I told him that night, we'll never let anything happen to you. And so we, for the next, I don't know, how many, 6 years, we went and got him, or I went and got him, took him to visit his family like my dad did, and it gave me purpose to try to give him stability. I tried not to drink around him, and show him some normalcy, because he would tell me about stuff that went on at home, and it was crazy. But all through this, I was still drinking alcoholically and, trying to live that dual life. And I finally, I think somewhere along there, when I still worked for Texas Instruments, I got moved out to Louisville to the missile plant. And I decided I was going to go to a meeting on the way home, and I did. And I remember this young lady kind of looked down on her luck like we do when we first come in, and she said, I just wanted, when I first went to a meeting, all I wanted to do was talk and tell you how miserable my life was. And I'm sure I got to share in there. I don't remember much about it, except when I left, she started talking to me, and I thought, this girl's coming on to me. And she said, please come back. And I was like, well, I can't go back. I don't want to start that up again. And, that was just my huge ego. And I went for several more years. I got a DWI about a year after Phil and I met. I was buying a house for us to live in. I'd never owned a home because, when we drink, we don't save wisely or spend wisely. And I was so nervous about it, and I was a huge worrywart. And I've joked about it, about how I would wake up in the morning, and if I wasn't worried about something, I knew I was forgetting something that I needed to worry about. I mean, it It was horrible. It was a horrible way to live. And so I always had this fear, just constant fear. And I got that DWI. Back then, they didn't send you to Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't even at first know that I was supposed to stop drinking until about 6 months in. I thought, I wonder if I better ask somebody. And they said, no, you're not supposed to drink. And so I sobered up for a year and a half while I was, well, it was 2 years. First 2 years probation, first 6 months drinking, I learned how to have a good time without drinking, but I didn't have the program. And so when probation was over, I was like, that's over. And maybe I can just have one beer. And you know the story, before you know it, it's worse when we go back. And I finally took, Phil and I were going to this church that was building a new sanctuary. And I was on the board of trustees with a real nice-looking, professional, well-dressed, ideal citizen lady that I got to be friends with, and she shared that she was sober and that she was in AA. And that's why to this day I do not keep myself anonymous, because you never know who's out there that might need the program, and I know a lot of people don't agree with that. I'll keep your anonymity, but mine, no. I don't brag about it. I just let people know, just in case. But I got in the program, and it took me 3 years to get sober completely. The first year I probably went out maybe 3 times, and then I got longer periods of sobriety. Got 9 months and went out. I got 15 months, my last slip, and every time I went straight back to AA the next day. And I hear these people talk about staying out for a couple of years, and I was like, how did you do that, man? I knew the minute I woke up the next morning that I needed to be in AA, and I'm glad I had that conviction. And so, the first year I wasn't really getting it, but I was staying sober. And by the second year, I'd started chairing meetings and doing a little service work. And then, the couple more times I went out, I'd come back with my tail between my legs and start over. And I finally got it after the last time spending 23 hours, I think, in a solitary jail cell, because I was so crazy when I came in. And I don't even want to tell you all the stuff. I don't know what all I did, but I know why I got put in jail, and I don't even talk to anybody about it because it was so pathetic. And but it was weird because I was only about, as a crow flies, about 2 miles from home. And that was the longest 23 hours. Every hour seemed like 3. And you have a lot of time to think. And, it's sort of like going through the stages of grief, I guess. You realize, how much of a mess your life is in. And then you cry a little. I showered, wanted to wash it off, and it doesn't wash off, and you can't sleep in the hard bed because it's got a mattress about that thick, and that's all. And the lights are on all the time, and so all you can do is think. And by the time I got out of there, I was like, "Oh my God, I can't do it. I don't have any more of these in me." And I came, but anyway, I started learning. I was trying to make a list of all the things that little slogans that we hear and hear that help us along our path. And the first thing that I learned was the only thing that I have control over is how I respond to people and situations right now. And at first, I remember my first sponsor, he asked me to make a list of all the stuff you think you have control over. Of course, I had a long list. And, he said, no, You don't have control over any of that stuff. Anything can happen, but you do have control over how you react. I learned things like if you spot it, you got it. I hated that one because it's true in most cases. You may not have it as bad as the people you spot, but you understand it well enough that you have got some of it in you. That in the beginning, you fake it till you make it. I heard that a lot. And all this stuff is probably not, it's a result of the words in the book, not necessarily paraphrased from the book. But fear being false events appearing real, that helped me to get out of my worrying phase. The main thing I learned to do, and my higher power, I was raised in the church and in a country Baptist, Southern Baptist Convention church. And I had it in my head that they were preaching at me. And I probably only heard the word homosexual and, what the Bible says about it a couple of times, but that was enough to make me feel like I always have a fear that I was going to go to hell, that I wasn't going to reap the beautiful place that the preacher talked about, the perfect place that we're supposed to be beside God and Jesus and all. And but I kept doing it thinking that'll increase my chances if I just keep going to church, get involved. And then we're only as sick as our secrets. Man, that really hit home because I'd carried that secret around with me for so long. And once I had found the attitude that, hey, that part of my life is nobody else's business, I started, and I heard that in here, and I heard, I read some famous writer back in the early 20th century. I can't think of his name. He was gay. He said we would all stop worrying so much about what people think of us if we only realized how little they think of us, meaning that they think of themselves more. And, that's just human nature in most people, the average person. And I started not being as self-conscious. I still have a little bit of self-conscious about me, but it's so much better than it used to be. And maybe a small amount of that is healthy. You want to present yourself well. And I learned to pray with thanksgiving primarily. And the only thing I pray for myself, other than little things like when I come and do this or before I speak in shares, just ask God to have me say the right thing that might help at least one person. And if only that's I did my job. And then the only thing else that I pray for myself is that God would lead me throughout this day to do the next right thing toward being in His will for my life. And I remember when I was first told that by a sponsor, thinking, well, what's the next right thing? And then I started learning about true faith, that things are going to be okay. And it all just snowballed. And I can see, the perfect plan of all that in hindsight. But I don't know if somebody else said it to me or I just figured it out. But I'm going to use this faith that I finally am practicing to not worry about what the next right thing is. Just trust that my higher power will lead me to do it throughout the day, whatever it is. And then I trust that whatever I do is the right thing. And you know when it's not the right thing, your conscience. And if it doesn't feel right, but I go ahead and feel convicted to do it, I figure there's some other higher purpose in there that doesn't have anything to do with me. Of course, resentments are the number one offender. Had plenty of those, and I let it build up in me. I was afraid to confront people. I thought it was all about me, so if anybody ever said anything against me or that made me feel less than, that was on them, you know. And I realized that I had to let go of that and really just trust the process. And you know, if it worked out that I was able to talk to him, the thing is, I would let it build up in me to where that talk to them would be in anger and, you know, body language and everything. So it didn't do a damn bit of good, you know. But I learned in here that you know when it's proper to talk to somebody, and you know when it's proper to just let it go. And most of the times it's proper just to let it go. Gratitude is everything. Like I was saying, I had several sponsors, and it seems like each one got me to the next level. And my most recent one I've had for I don't know how many years, a long time. And I don't really see him. I saw him a lot in the beginning, and we just talk occasionally now. And I rarely see him because I've learned exactly what he's going to say to me when I call him, that something's in my craw. I know he's going to say, just trust that it's going to be okay. Everything's going to be all right. Just calm down. And, you know, those are simple but true words that we should heed to. You know, when we're when we get worked out about stuff, we just need to stop and learn to stop and breathe, halt. You know, hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. Stop and take deep breaths and regroup. Meeting makers make it. That's another just simple one. I truly believe in that because I've seen too many people stop going to meetings and then they end up going out. And they have to go through that experience of it being worse than the time before and all the shame and all that. I remember Preston is still one of my home groups, but they were my home group. It's the only group I went to for the longest. And they were over on Luther Lane before they moved to the nicer area building they're in now around the corner. But there was this long hall that it was like a business here, and then a hall between them going to the back of the building where AA was. And you walked through the smoking section, and then there was room for the non-smokers. And it was glassed-in walls, and, you know, you could see the smokers and the dingy ceiling tiles in there and all that. And I remember just walking down that hall the times I went out, the day coming back, and just the shame. And I was like, oh no, everybody was so proud of me, and I was so proud of me, and now I fucked it up. But, you know, I learned in here, you always have a chance to start over. You have a chance to start over during the middle of the day, you know, if you want to. You don't have to wait till the next day or even the next hour. You can stop and regroup, and I don't know. This program has just been wonderful for me. I am so glad. I count it as one of the biggest blessings, and knowing all of you good people, and everything I've learned from you, and the friendships I've gained in here, and I appreciate you listening to me tonight. Thanks.